Welcome back. You're still watching Daybreak on this 19th day of November 2024. And in studio, I have the panel of Alex Kanyi, who is a tax expert from CDH Kenya. I have Mheshimiwa John Kagusha from Mukurweini constituency. Good morning, Mheshimiwa.
Good morning.
Umekuwa wapi?
Nairobi and Mukurweini. I've been around and largely I've been on the ground.
We haven't heard a lot from you.
Recently, yes, but I'm back and
Good
ready to share the knowledge that we have on different issues to our people.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I've been much engaged in Mukurweini on the ground. You know, we were told to listen to the ground, so yeah. I've been listening.
It takes that long to listen? Okay, all right. Karibu sana. Abraham Ochieng is Senior Programs Officer from Budget Hub. Good morning.
Good morning, Sam.
And Budget Hub is the former International Budget Partnership Kenya. How is that going?
So far, so good.
Right.
Yeah, still getting on with the budget conversations.
All right.
Thank you.
And we're here to talk about the proposals that have been presented to the National Assembly. There are 4 bills, which is Tax Laws Amendment Bill 2024, Tax Procedures Amendment Bill 2024, Business Laws Amendment Bill 2024, and Public Finance Amendment Bill 2024, all seeking to change a few things in the management of the country's affairs when it comes to finances. Of course, we've heard of the public participation exercise starting off yesterday. The committee was in Bungoma and Isiolo. Some few voices raised there. The committee is promising that they will listen to what Kenyans are saying on these particular bills. And of course, we'll be talking about a bit of that. But also this morning on the papers, you find that on the Daily Nation, Ruto's major purge of Gachagua allies, and they're saying that there will be a shake-up scheduled for this week. And some of the faces that the nation is reporting to be targeted is Dindi Nyoro, who is currently chair Budget and Appropriations Committee, Kadhino Mushamba, Constitution and Implementation Committee, James Gakuya, Trade Industry Cooperatives Committee, Musa Vincent Musyoka, Departmental Committee on Energy, Johanna Ngeno, Housing, Urban Development and Public Works, Kareke Mbiuki, Tourism and Wildlife Committee, Wanjiku Muhia, Regional Integration Committee, and Nimrod Mbai, Public Petitions Committee. And the details of that story on pages 4 and 5. And they're saying that the purge schedule for this week affects 14 MPs serving in an influential committee. Leadership positions were viewed as sympathetic to former DP Rigathi Gachagua, who was ousted last week and replaced with last month, and replaced with Professor Kithure Kindiki, who has been deputy president for the past 18 days or so. And the detailed coverage is right there. And Kimilili MP Didmas Baraza, the vice chairperson of the Transport and Infrastructure Committee, was categorical that changes include reorganization of committees is inevitable, especially when the House is in mid-term. Mheshimiwa Kagusha, have you heard of these developments, and what will this mean, especially for the 13th Parliament in management of affairs of the country?
Well, I have followed what is happening in Parliament, and this was expected, especially after the purge of the Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua. And it was expected that depending on what side one took, some form of consequences would follow. And it's okay, it's all right to reorganize the committees of Parliament. But again, this will also have far-reaching political implications in the country and in the political landscape, because what you expect to see now is once some of the influential members of Parliament are removed from influential committees, especially people who did give too much in the last election. Yeah. Especially if you look at Dindi Nyoro, he was very much involved in forming this government and also campaigning for it. He was on the road almost 24/7 for almost 5 years and took too much risk together with Rigathi Gachagua. And now you see what is going to happen because of the shake-up that is going on.
Right.
Some of the people who gave too much in the last election and in the election campaign are being replaced by people who largely were not seen on the political trail, on the campaign trail. And that tells you that sometimes you can actually harvest where you did not sow. And also it also tells you that sometimes you do not harvest what you sowed. And so it's going to have ramifications and serious political implications. This is the beginning of the political realignments in the country. And this is going to determine a lot of other things in the political arrangement and arithmetic of this country, especially in regard to how Kenya is governed, and also in regard to 2027 elections. Yeah.
Did you see this coming?
Well, people these days say that the Kenyan syllabus is moving rather fast. It's just about 3 months ago where all of us were so much united on everything else, just about 3, 4, 5 months ago. But within that period of time, so much has changed. Clearly, like 5 months ago, this was not anything that one would have thought about. But now you see it is the reality because of the events that have taken place and activities that have been going on within that period of time. So as much as we had not seen it coming, I think as things have been unfolding, then we have been reading quite a bit of this. I know some of us who may have taken an independent position on matters that the government has been pushing, particularly on the issue of ouster of Rigathi Gachagua. We expected that some consequences would follow. And I think as a politician, you must always count the cost. You must understand that for whatever action you do, there's definitely a reaction. So anyone who did take an action must live with the consequences. So for example, in this case, because I know most of the political realignment is based on the position you took in the Gachagua debacle. Now, for those who did oust Gachagua, they're also suffering their consequences when it comes to their relationship with the people on the ground, because you can clearly tell what the people wanted. For those who did not support the ouster of Gachagua, also have to face the wrath of the bosses and the political players and the principals. And it's okay. I mean, everyone faces their own consequences in their own way. Is it fair? I mean, there's politics. With politics, you sometimes you're not looking for fairness. Sometimes people are looking for interest on how to align and realign. So it may not be fair, but again, it's okay. So what is your answer? Is it fair or not? Definitely. How would it be fair if someone was on the campaign trail with you for 5 years and suffered all the serious risks that they suffered under the last regime, and hardly 2 years in office, you oust them and they are out in the cold. And you are determining... But we were told that Parliament is rightfully executing its mandate of oversight. The highest level of oversight would be impeachment, they said. Well, the Parliament was oversighting the Deputy President in impeaching him. Well, that is strange. But I think there will definitely be larger consequences in all these arithmetic, because what ought to have been done maybe is to also think about the bigger picture and see if there would have been a different approach. If you remember, what personally I always advocated for was a more modest and more moderate approach to this, rather than these far-reaching steps that were taken, especially in impeachment. Personally, I advocated more diplomatic approach, whereby people would sit down, reason together and see if really they can be able to bring back the relationship that was that seemed to dissipate within a very short time. All right. So I think now that did not happen. We are here. And clearly, as I have said, people who gave so much in the last election now have to see the door. And people who may not have invested anything, who may not have supported the regime, are now going to pick the spoils. And of course, that will be akin to dancing on other people's graves.
Okay, all right, Mheshimiwa Kagusha. Now, Alex, I don't know why you're smiling, but with this reality, I mean, where does it leave the country? Because you expect the independence of I don't even know whether that exists, because you keep talking about it. Recently, we're also talking about the independence of the judiciary, which appears to also be facing some challenges there. So what are we doing? Are we making progress post-2010?
In fact, I cared to look at the BBI report. Went back up to 2019. Because remember, BBI, you had guys who are now trying to get into or have gotten into the government. Mm-hmm. And basically, there was a promise they're also making to Kenyans. And I can mention one of them. They seem to be planning to give a tax holidays to guys who are not earning much, mm-hmm. Including MSMEs, mm-hmm. A 7-year holiday. Now that they have part of the government, I'm hoping to see that as part of their tax proposals, but I'm yet to see it. Then I went on to look at, and I'm answering your question in terms of, do the politicians actually have an interest in this thing? Mm-hmm. I then went on to look at the NADCO report. Yeah. The National Development, I think, is it the National Development Committee?
National Dialogue.
So I was hoping it is development. So anyway, there was a lot of discussion around it. And of course, there were many presentations that were being made by Kenyans to say, this is what we expect. Yeah. So basically, it was a very good opportunity where Kenyans were now telling the political class, this is how we are feeling, and this is what we expect you to do to just make us live a little bit comfortably. Right. But last month, there was a report that was tabled in Parliament by the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee. And when I was looking at that particular report for October, I then tried to check. So you heard all this about the issues that are concerning Kenyans. So what are you recommending as a solution? But what did I see? I saw a proposed amendments to the Elections Act, proposed amendments to the Political Parties Act, proposed amendments to introduce leader of opposition as, you know, an office. And so I asked myself, so where did we start and where are we finishing? And is the political class still in touch with what Kenyans want? So that quick forward, we come to the tax laws amendment bills, which I believe we'll discuss, together with the tax procedures amendment bill. And you have to read that in the context of Finance Bill 2024, which was withdrawn. And again, the question is, what exactly are we doing there? And I'm not saying that everything there is negative. Actually, there are very good, positive things within those particular laws, which I believe we will discuss. Yes. And then we see where that takes us in terms of the politicians and also getting in touch with the people.
And Abraham, what are your thoughts about these political movements at a time also that you're hearing from the church criticizing the government on how it's running the affairs of the state?
Thanks, Sam. So first, I think one important thing is that Parliament has been, we elected people into members of Parliament to represent us and also to create some sense of oversight over the executive. But as we have seen, it's become a place where we no longer have some level of accountability or even independence of this particular institution. And so when we see this happening, then we are not able to have, as citizens, we push for parliamentarians to be able to hold the executive accountable. And therefore, even as we have our representatives there, so we are seeing that there is a very blurred line between the executive. So there's no accountability from my perspective. And even as we see what the leaders are also saying is that Parliament needs to step up and take over its accountability, responsibility over the executive. There are certain promises that were made by the by the executive. We are not seeing them come to pass. So that is just what the religious leaders are actually coming out to say. You made promises to the people of Kenya. We are waiting to see, is this happening, and why isn't it happening, and why are they not being held accountable? So I think that those are some of the critical things that we need to push, especially on the accountability side of it. Yeah.
Interesting. Let's listen to what the Anglican leaders said yesterday, Anglican Church of Kenya leaders said yesterday in regards to this particular question. Of course, you recall that not long ago, actually Thursday last week, the Catholic Church bishops also came out to issue a statement calling out the government on several issues of management of the country, and the leaders of the Anglican Church have spoken. We'll be getting that clip shortly. But Mheshimiwa Kagusha, so then it started off with denials from the side of the government. Several statements were issued. But then days later, the president considered and said some of the issues that we've raised, we are going to address them. Now we've seen Archbishop of Nairobi, Philip Anyola, issuing a statement saying that the resources or the funds that were given to Soweto Catholic Church will be taken back, and the pledge to donate more has been declined. What are we witnessing?
Well, I think Kenyans are demanding more, and they expect more. Recently, we had the young people who came out to the streets to demand of more accountability. Yesterday, I had a session. In fact, I chaired a session with the Kenyans who live in the diaspora, who also are saying they want their voice to be heard. They want to participate more home because they contribute so much to the economy of Kenya through their remittances, which go to all the way to more than 650 billion.
Right.
And now you also have the church, which is also putting their voice forward, and they're saying we expect more from the political class, from the leadership of this country, and from the governance. And you know, they're also pinpointing the issues that are going wrong. What is strange is to see that some of us, as a political class and the leaders, have denied some of the issues that have been raised, and some of our politicians have actually gone ahead to even castigate and mudsling the bishops. You remember there's one particular politician who went out to besmirch the name of one of the bishops, Bishop Muheria, even when he had not uttered a word in that presser, and called him all manner of names, and really that is inappropriate. And I would want to say that as a political class, we must understand that this nation does not belong to us alone. This is a country that belongs to everyone. It belongs to the churches. It belongs to the children. It belongs to the people who are in the diaspora. It belongs to the young people. It belongs to everyone, including the media. And so we expect that everyone want to participate, as it is their constitutional right, in the running of this country. And so we cannot then muzzle anyone. So when the church speaks, we must listen. When the young people speak, we must listen. When our electorate and our citizens speak, we must listen, and we have no option. And when they say things that we need to do, then we need to take action and maybe even have a round table. And of course, I would also agree quite a lot with the people who are also saying that we don't also need to respond too much with our words. What we need to do much more is action. I have seen some of the people say that the money that was either promised or given in Soweto was sufficient to seal the loopholes on the road. You know, that...
you mean the potholes?
Yeah, the potholes that were used to... I mean, that leads
But the money is getting out through the loopholes, right?
Yeah, so... sorry, I said loopholes. I meant the potholes.
Right.
Yeah, so indeed, what we need to do is ensure that we are not removing money from the mainstream development line into more of the political line.
What if it's private generosity or personal generosity?
Well, I think...
Is there a chance?
I think we all understand that generally the resources that will be around politicians will largely be from taxpayers. Yeah, so... we need to ensure that so much of this money goes back to development. And so
how does that work? Because I could be wrong, but I have not seen Interior Cabinet Secretary Professor Kithure Kindiki at a church donating. But when he became deputy president, he had 2 million sadaka to escort President Ruto's 5 million sadaka. How does that work?
Of course, you must have heard of things like the confidential vote and such other things. And it came out to the fore so much during this fight between the big political horns in this country. That's when you realize that there was so much money that is available for the political class. I mean, it was all over in the newspapers and also in media being discussed. And where was the information coming from? It was coming from government. And that, for example, we availed to you 800 million Kenya shillings for confidential vote. Even myself, I had not known that so much money was actually available for the political honkos. Yeah, I don't know why they don't give such to the chiefs and the headmen and the principals of schools when they are running the institutions, you know.
What is that confidential vote supposed to do? I mean, 800 million is a lot of money. It's almost $1 billion.
Yeah, this is money that is not accounted for. So it's money that is available to you for, yeah, so maybe... probably for those kind of stuff, like what maybe Kindiki has done in Kirinyaga or wherever else. So the issue is that if we can do it the Kibaki way, and really I'm convinced that is what we need to do, just remove all these funds from these available funds for political activities and return this money back into the mainstream development agenda. You remember that's how Kibaki was able to deal with this issue of CDF in 2004. When the CDF came to effect, I mean, you couldn't find money lying idle anywhere. So much of this money was taken back to CDF. And it was very critical in running this country and devolving the funds to the grassroots. So
that's okay, Mheshimiwa Kagusha. Yeah. Let's just listen to what the Anglican Church leaders said yesterday.
Law on their attack on the Catholic bishops and the church leaders whenever we speak against corruption in this country. Honorable Shulei must go slow on her chest thumping and boisterous utterances against the people she considers anti-government. We are soon going to call for a national prayer to call all corrupt people into account, and for those who fail, we will courageously declare a curse upon them.
Alex, should I feel threatened? Should we feel threatened that a curse will be declared on our leaders?
That's interesting. Yeah. In fact, I'm shocked. I hadn't listened to that. I'm like, we'll declare a curse. Should you be threatened? I think you should be threatened. Not really because of the curse, but you should be threatened because of the changing winds. Because if I remember right, when this government was coming into power, the religious leaders were backing them up. And now you see one after the other saying, we think that government, you should be listening more to the people. You have the problem with SHA in terms of implementation. You have the cost of living. You have the unemployment for the youth. And these are the issues that we want you to focus on. So I think that and I'm not a politician, should mean something if you are a politician who got a lot of support from these people. Yeah.
So, I mean, where do you take this conversation? Because initially it was appearing, and you've seen even on social media, there are people who are fighting back and saying that church is just pretending. It's pretentious because they're also responsible for the campaigns of 2022 and subsequent election. How do we resolve this relationship between the state and the church without really affecting the core of the society?
No, at the end of the day, the church must be involved. Personally, I go to church. I think my church leader has also spoken. And we know we can't leave it. It can't be that because the church, for example, if any, they made a mistake when they were supporting the government to get into power, then they are tied to that mistake for the next 5 years. No, if something goes wrong and they represent the people, their masses that come to their churches, etc., I think they should be able to speak out and say, we think this is where we see a problem and we want to hold the government accountable. And I think that's right.
Right. And the question that Mheshimiwa Kagushi was raising about management of public finance, that there's a confidential vote of up to 800 million shillings. We've seen a state officer who recently was not involved in such kind of donations but now is. What does this tell us?
We fought that thing of the confidential vote, and I think I heard the chairman for budget, Ndindi Nyoro, actually say that we have listened to you and we are removing that particular confidential vote. I'm not too sure whether it still appears within the supplementary budgets that they presented. But definitely think I agree with Mheshimiwa here that focus should be ensuring that whatever monies we already have in terms of our expenditure, they're then utilized towards helping the public. And the public here, I mean the greater public, not one congregation in a church as an example. So if guys are saying and I think I was watching part of the news this morning around the roads and infrastructure network, if those monies could be allocated towards such things that help many people, I think that would be useful. If those monies were to be allocated to the lecturers in the universities who are on strike, I think that would also be very useful. And those would be my thoughts.
Okay. All right. And for you, Abraham, so how do we manage resources? Because Parliament sits to plan for resources in terms of allocation of budgets, and it's in a very lengthy and inclusive process, but still you find the avenues of wastage.
Sam, you're right, because we see, and especially we see the process of the budget. The budget process is actually very lengthy, very involving, and we get citizens involved at various stages. If you think about immediately from the circular that comes out, and currently this week we have the sector hearings that are going to be happening, then we'll go on to having the budget policy statement. So I think there are certain decisions where citizens are heavily involved. However, when it comes to the implementation stage of the budget, once the budget has been approved and we see the implementation begins, then that's where a lot happens. We have supplementary budgets coming through, and that's the point at which a lot of the changes really get to be made. If we just take a step back and look at the request that one of the committees in Parliament actually made to the Auditor General, was to look at the expenditure under Article 223 of the Constitution over they actually requested for 2 years, but the Auditor General did up to 9 years. And some of the issues that are being raised are issues of under what circumstances is Article 223 being used to spend or to approve certain resources. And we find that's one of the biggest loopholes, because at the supplementary point, we do not see the same level of engagement of citizens when it comes to approval of the supplementary budget. And also, but I think we must give it up to the executive, because for the first time in 2022-2023 is when for the first time in the history of supplementary budgets, we actually did have a call for public to be engaged in the process. And we've seen it 2 more times. But the question still remains, at how much time are we given to be able to engage within these particular processes? But also further to that, we see that the state, I think when it comes to supplementary budgets that are being passed, the Budget and Appropriations Committee in 2019 actually passed a recommendation and said beyond April we should not have any supplementary budgets because it makes it very difficult even for them to try and approve and look at everything. But we still find 2 days to the end of the financial year, we find a supplementary budget, and we cannot even ascertain. So when it comes to Parliament for approval, after they've spent, given with the provisions of Article 223, then we see that they just pass things without necessarily scrutinizing to that extent, yes.
All right. On June 26, 2024, the President read at State House that I direct that operational expenditure in the presidency to be reduced to remove allocations for the confidential vote, reduce travel budget, hospitality and buying of vehicles, renovations and other expenditures. he said. In equal measure, President Ruto directed that Parliament, the Judiciary and county governments work with the National Treasury and undertake budget cuts to ensure that the government achieves what he has always advocated, living within our means. So I don't know where that money is coming from if the confidential vote was scrapped altogether. But it's good to note that on that Sunday, at least 12 million shillings was given.
Maybe one of the other things that was also raised on that day.
Let's take a short break. We'll come back with more as we dive into the conversation of the tax proposals from the government side with the 4 bills that are before the House. After the break.